Well, from West Nile, we return to the capital of the country, Kampala, here at Serena Conference Center, where we continue the conversations here in Morning at NTV. In studio, we are having our Kickstarter, which is looking at Uganda's universities and their readiness and preparedness to enter the competence best era. I am Priscilla Regina Nalwoka. You can join the conversation across our social media platforms on the hashtag Morning at NTV. We are also streaming live on our website www.ntv.co.ug. You can be able to pick up the program there as you do settle in for your day's program, agendas and meetings. Now, for generations, a university degree in Uganda largely being understood as proof that a student has actually completed a prescribed program of study, attended lectures, accumulated the credit hours, sat for exams, completed assignments, and eventually wearing that gown and posing and say, yes, I have graduated with a bachelor's of law. I have graduated with a bachelor's in social studies, in medicine. The list goes on and on. But that model is now going to be challenged. The question Uganda is asking is simple but yet significant. Is a degree now enough to graduate a student, or can it actually demonstrate more than just graduating our students? The National Council of Higher Education is now driving a major shift towards competence-based education and training. In January this year, 2026, the National Council of Higher Education brought together different stakeholders, including vice-chancellors, principals, as well as academic registrars, to validate minimum standards of implementing the competence-based education. These standards cover curriculum design. They also cover teaching and learning, assessment, faculty training, student support, quality assurance, industry and community linkages, and also monitoring and evaluation, as well as gender and equity. Then in this very same year, in March, the same council did come through and publish the minimum standards for this competence-based education and training in Uganda. And perhaps the biggest deadline is the one that is before the university or institutions of higher education. As of this morning, from 2027 to 2028 academic year, the higher education institutions are expected to admit students only on programs that have been fully aligned with the competence-based education framework. Now, this reform is also connected to changes in the lower elements of education from secondary all the way to primary, which are also intended to roll out by 2028. In June, the National Council of Higher Education and the National Curriculum Development Center collectively consulted university vice-chancellors on the proposed upper secondary curriculum framework, specifically looking at how the competence-based learning assessment as well as university admissions could be aligned. And this comes at a time when employers are continuing to question whether the university graduate has the practical skills that they need for the futureness of the jobs, because even jobs have changed right now. We look at the Afrobarometer data of 2024 for Uganda, finding that 19.5% of respondents identified lack of experience required by employers as one of the barriers of youth employment. As of today, you do have another 12.3% citing a mismatch between the education qualifications and the job requirements. So what exactly will change in the university classroom is one of the answers we will find on this table. Will students still sit in the traditional 3-hour examination? Our professors will be informing us. And then, will lecturers remain the primary source of knowledge, or, like we have seen in the lower secondary, will the student now have a bigger role to play in accumulating education? And most importantly, will a competence-based university produce a graduate who can actually perform, solve problems, innovate and adopt, rather than simply pass the examination? Now, to unpack these, I'm joined by professors and doctors from different universities that are going to help us do the understanding, the breakdown and the detailing of what is anticipated by 2028. I do have Professor Dr. Muhammad Mpeza Mihingo, who is the Vice Chancellor, Equator University of Science and Technology. You're most welcome, and good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Thank you very much for hosting me this morning.
Oh, so thank you so much for being with us. We also do have Professor Dr. Patrick Idrin Chamanywa, Vice Chancellor, Uganda Matters University. Good morning to you.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this discussion.
Okay, so from your understanding, when we are talking about competence-based education and training as a country, what should we be futuristically putting into consideration? I will start with you, Professor Adrian.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, let's define the competence-based education and training. This is a model of training that emphasizes the ability to do beyond the knowledge of. So previously we have been emphasizing the demonstration of the knowledge of something or about something. What the National Council and indeed the East African community is driving towards is to see that the graduates, the students, right from the lower levels as you have highlighted, to the university, can demonstrate their ability to do beyond just the description of process. They must be able to do. Now, what does that mean? It means that we, and I will use 4 P's to describe what this means. The first P is the promise. We are promising the country and the learner that by the time this student is out of our hands in the education institution, they'll be able to describe and go ahead to do certain things that are described in the curriculum. Solve problems, collaborate, diagnose, invent, innovate. That's what we are promising. The other P that we need now to look at is the people. Our lecturers must be therefore retooled to be able to transit from what we sometimes call giving the gospels according to Chamanywa and calling that on different subjects, to being facilitators of learning. Now, that is not an easy transition because they have to give up certain assumed powers and authorities of being the sage on the stage to being a facilitator of learning, acknowledging that the student who picks up this approach will now be able to come with even better notes than they would have read to them in the lecture. So the people mindset and retooling must happen. The other P is the processes. The way we deliver has to change. So from a lecture only to a lot of practical engagement of the student in discussion, in community, in industry. Even the way we assess is going to change, say from a written only exam to orals to community engagement. The examiners themselves, the process of the examination, previously we've been running it and actually we accredit the examiners. You must have a PhD in this, must have. But now with CBE or CBET as we now call it, we are going to have to accept that the farmer who is exporting coffee, who is selling milk, can actually be the chief examiner of an agricultural exam. Now that, and they don't need to have a PhD. They are in the field and they are trading, and so they have what it takes for the field. They know what you require to run a successful coffee plantation, a successful coffee business, beyond the theory. So we now must accept that even though they don't have the PhD, they can actually be the people to determine whether this candidate is ready or not. And therefore, the other P is the product. So the way we now assess the product has to change. Because the product we've looked at before is the product of a first class with expert memory on the facts. Now we need to look at a product of a first class with demonstrated competences in the prescribed areas that are relevant to the profession that they are pursuing. So I think, to me, that there is a lot of changing therefore that must happen. And I think I can leave it there for now.
Okay, all right.
you.
Professor Mpeza,
Yes.
of course that's a good opener of elements that are being considered in the CBET. And from where you are seated at Equator University, what does that reality look like for you?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to agree with the definition, the overview of what the competence-based education and training curriculum that we are heading for, as given by Patrick. At the university, first of all, we should appreciate that we do have now categories of students. We have continuing students, and we also have students who are joining, and some of them actually, maybe in a year's time, will have come from a changed system. However, I also want to do a basic reflection. I and Patrick went to school almost the same time. I think we even shared the same hall at Makerere. You know, we undertook our studies in a term system. So change has come from that far. And when we were studying, I mean, you'd have year 1 up to year 4 or up to year 5. The final exam in your final year reflected everything. Now, the changes that have happened over years within the university system, for example, have actually segmented the learning process. So we now have semester systems. And what is very funny and a bit disturbing is that students, especially if the courses are not supplementing the prior courses, let's say you have foundations of microbiology 1, and then you have the second semester. If they are not subsequent to one another, if they are segmented, you find that once the students have done their exams, forget it. They are not bothered about that continuity. So the segmentation and the changes that have happened over years, I think this is the right time for us now to build a communicating education system. Now the changes that have happened in the lower secondary school, there are some abridged changes so far, not wholly in the A-level system. However, the primary school is also yet to come on board. So we are required, and for the last 6 or so years, including the COVID period, the university higher education system should have embarked on this process much earlier. Now, these students who join university at Equator or at UMU or any other university, for example, are even unaware that this requirement is coming. So the continuing students are even asking, so if next year we are required to comply,
They be affected.
Yes, so what happens? So at the Senate level, we are discussing a moderated transition, you know, when we are doing the phasing out,
yeah.
But also enabling them to pick up a few of the changes. For example, if a student is in year 1, they still have another 4 years to go, it would be unreasonable for any university to let this student go through the next 4 years when actually things are going to change. So we have to be flexible enough. And then also, the other bit is about the staff, as he has said. The staff actually use yellow notes. Some of them have been like demigods, and what they have said is final. Even in the information age, when students ask some difficult questions, some of the staff probably think this is undermining them. So the mindset has to change completely. And I think, although we have an issue with the timing, so we'll have to go for it, but then the regulator, the government has also to understand that this is going to be a process that will require a lot of mindset, a lot of investment, a lot of thinking, and also benchmarking.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the instruction by the government is having the right hat. But you've talked about the element of timing, and that timing may not be favorable, especially for university education that is being acquired left, right, and center, and where I think we sort of return to term systems,
Yes.
because now you have 3 intakes in a given cycle of education. But one of the things that we want to understand deeply is that through the discussions and consultation meetings that you've had with the Ministry of Education and the other stakeholders, what have come out as the critical elements as to why, as a country, must transition to CBET?
Yeah, basically, the reality actually, I always talk about it whenever I have an opportunity, is that the mismatch is a reality between the graduates moving out and what they're expected to do in the job market. Mm-hmm. However, there's also another issue that has always been ignored, and this is the issue of absorption capacity. I mean, for example, medical doctors, okay? Medical doctors are available in the country, but then you still have, and medical doctors are really, because they have 3 out of their 2 years, including their first basic years, do a lot of practicals. They actually do more practicals than just the theoretical papers. Even the exams are actually already segmented to pick out the practical skills. So you'll find that even when you have graduates who are probably skilled, the absorption capacity in terms of jobs is still an issue. So that is something that is haunting everybody. Mm-hmm. Now, the original idea of our education system was to be a white-collar job system. And yet, we need to go into the jua kali, you know, that you need to fold your shirts, you need to be in your apron and everything. That is true,
because the white-collar jobs are
almost,
they're consumed.
No, they are all, it's already, there's no space. I mean, there are very few offices, and people are not interested in you sitting in the office. You need to go in the field, you need to change, you need to make money. And so we have to give a new orientation, and so it's valid for us to move that way. Countries like Germany and others that started already with technical skills have actually taken over a lot of opportunities all over. Look at the Asian giants. All of them have actually decided to skill their population, and I think this is the way to go. Our own people now are moving to different parts of the world because they have to do things practically. Mm-hmm. However, they are not skilled enough, and that's why they are paid peanuts. They suffer a lot, some of them, and we have seen these stories. So it's relevant for now the universities and higher education institutions to equip students and graduates so that by the time they move out, they are able to do one of the two. If you haven't been employed, you should create a job. And that job has to be created and planned for during the curriculum delivery period. You are 3 years, 4 years in the university. How much time have you been in the community? What appreciations have you made? Let's say if you are doing agriculture and you are in the Greater Masaka region, okay, you're a student of Equator University. The area is known for coffee growing, matoke and others, and you're doing agriculture. How much time have you been at the farm with the farmer and understanding that during the drought, this is what you do. There's mulching, there's etc., etc., before you even examine it. And the other component is what Professor Patrick Chamanyo has brought out. We now have to engage, we have to harness, and I even call it harvesting, mm-hmm. the indigenous knowledge and experiences, and create professors of practice. You know, it's very interesting. You are an engineer, and your car gets stuck on the road. You have to call,
and you have to call another engineer to come and fix
not it. Another engineer. Yeah. This young man who has built skills over years, and this is what they now call prior learning, recognition of prior learning. So we have to harvest, we have to put together this skills base, the competence base, and make sure it is transferable. So our graduates actually fit in and even take roles that other people are taking without spending a lot of money and time. You spend 7-10 million to undertake a degree in engineering every academic year, and yet this young man who has been working in a garage is able to identify a problem. And you hold a first class in engineering, you're driving a car, and you are parked there waiting for somebody to come and open the car bonnet and fix. So this is the bridging that needs to happen, where universities communicate with the real world of work, bring on board these professors of practice, recognize their skill base, And I think, I don't know what National Council is going to do, but we need to have a mechanism of creating databases of skills-based.
But you see, even the National Council is here, they're seated saying, we don't know what universities are going to do or how universities are going to do that. So, Professor Chamanywa, how are universities going to, what he's saying, how are you going to actually translate it to be a reality, that you actually bridge that mismatch and you bring together these skills and abilities from where they are, bring them and align them together with these ones who feel like, because I'm paying this much amount of money to acquire this education, because I am going to, you know, your university. You know, there's already that mindset clustering of, we're different from you, even though they have more skill than we have in the classroom.
Sure. Yeah, thank you again. The competence-based education and training, first of all, is critical for our tenfold economic growth, the $500 billion economy that the president has guided we should target by 2040. And of course, he's also guided that we should look at the ATMs, you know, the agriculture, tourism, manufacturing, and the service. And all these are skill-oriented. So as a university, what we need to do, therefore, is to critically think about what needs to change, like you've asked. The economics of delivery of university education is going to change. Definitely, the funding model must be reviewed. It is very expensive to run a competence-based education and training program. So what I would prepare the audience for is that we are going to have to pay more for university education. Why? Because the processes, like I said earlier, are going to demand a different arrangement. It's been very economical now to get one lecturer and have an amphitheater or a lecture room with 200, 300 students and a projector, and they're able to lecture to these 300 students. With the competence-based, we should not exceed 40 to 50 students in a group. 25 would even be better. And so they have to learn in smaller groups. Now, what does that create as a need? It creates a need for facilitators of learning. Where one lecturer could suffice, you might need 3 or 4. That's a human resource cost. So as universities, we need to start budgeting for that and projecting it. We are also going to have to create learning spaces. So our infrastructure investment must be different, with open spaces, no longer the lecture room arrangement, but small tables of 10 or 20, where students can engage in a problem that has been set either by industry or by the lecturer, or something that has come up that they need to work upon. Then the workshop areas. Previously, we've thought workshops are only for engineering and medicine. But now there has to be hubs where students can go innovate and test out their models and so on. Then, of course, connectivity. Competence-based education in this knowledge and information era cannot succeed if students will not have access to information. And most of this is on the internet. So we've got to enable the students to access the internet. They must have the gadgets, and we must provide the connectivity. Now, as universities, that's an area we need to invest in. Fortunately, we've been working with RENU, the Research and Education Network Uganda, which is actually owned by the vice chancellors or by the universities that are members. It is helping us in bridging that connectivity. But with it comes the skilling. We've got to skill both the lecturer, because some of the lecturers were still intimidated by internet and technology. We've got to skill the students. These days, going in for an IT degree, I mean, very soon it might not be necessary, because we have AI coming in to do most of these things that we've been wanting people to be very good at. But the basic competence in digital and computer literacy must be demonstrated. So we must therefore emphasize that the level of competence at digital and computer use is heightened. So this will come in with the retooling of the lecturers themselves to be able to change their mindset and challenge. We've also got to ensure that as universities, we seek support from government, because the investment required, like I have already itemized, is huge for any one university. Look at staffing. I mean, around February, we had a report looking at the staffing in some of the public universities. Busitema was reported at 10% staffing of what is expected. Makerere, our reference as a nation, had just about 39.6% staffing level.
Of required
staffing. Although I know that recently they have recruited over 240 staff, but even of that, just about 150 are academic staff who are going to be required.
They are falling short by over 50%.
Yeah, and if we fall short, then we can't work with smaller groups. So with the time, we'll be falling back to the old practice of a large lecture.
But if the competence-based education is student-centered, then can students be equipped to bridge that gap of staffing?
Yes.
If you find competent students who can.
Yes, the students will be helped to develop the competence. Like I said, if we give them the gadgets, the connectivity, the learning spaces. But you can't run away from the facilitator need. Otherwise, yes, they could teach themselves something, because with AI these days, you can learn many things. But still, you need the facilitator to help you ground and contextualize what you are getting. And that is going to be the key role, actually, of industry, of lecturers, of community, that what you have learned, the information is contextualized, and therefore the skill is brought to be relevant to the point of contention on ground. Otherwise, we can still fly high on the theoretical aspects. So we can't run away from the staffing, even when the information is accessible.
Okay.
And this is where I propose, and I think it is something that needs to be discussed. We have a rich resource within the practitioners. For example, in engineering, in agriculture, in business. If you are teaching a business course, let us say Bachelor's of Business Administration or entrepreneurship, we do have very, very successful entrepreneurs. And the competence-based education and training system requires that we consider about 40% minimum from the practical delivery. And so this student-driven or learner-driven, because now they are even running away from the use of the word student. These are learners. So the learner-driven education system would give them an opportunity to unpack their own potentials, to actually realize that they can actually communicate, they can critically think. And I'll give an example. Recently in March, when we had the national exhibitions by the National Council for Higher Education, which was hosted in Gulu City. Our university, Equator University of Science and Technology, we were able to present 5 innovations from the students. And the amazing bit about those innovations is that we challenge the students under the supervision of the staff that you are in the Greater Masaka region. identify for us 5 key problems and come up with innovations that are going to address these problems. And one of the innovations is actually the car breakdown application, which would put together the database that would be accessible through the phone of all mechanics, of all available drivers, of all garages, of all insurance companies operating, of all health centers and ambulance services. It was such an amazing thought from the students, and this alone can actually fix a problem on the road. It can be meaningful, and then when you want to deliver such skill, you bring the mechanics on board, they participate. I mean, universities have actually for long been ivory towers. And I think this competence-based is going to actualize the interrelationship between the practitioners and the universities, because you become an island in your own place. But if a local mechanic, a local farmer knows that they have relevance in this semester, they're even scheduled to come and share. And then we also transport the students to go on the farm and have some time there. That synergy, I think, is going to change everything. And that will also inform our curriculum. And that's the basic reason why we think there is a mismatch. When our graduates move out of universities, they are seen like, oh, these are supposed to go in the office. Because some programs, students study for 3 years, 4 years without interfacing. Even the so-called internships and placements, when they get to these companies and offices, they end up serving tea. They manage the reception desk. And this is a student supposed to be doing computer engineering or computer science. We've sent him or her to the bank. The bank is selfish. They cannot allow the student to access the database. It's
not that the bank is selfish. The bank is trying to protect its customers and the data that must be, given as much attention as possible. So the student not having the experience, which is the argument, because you don't have experience, I cannot trust you to actually handle these elements.
But Priscilla,
that are
how do I have the experience if you do not give me the opportunity to learn?
Actually, that is why we now have to look at what used to be the triple helix, but now I want to call the quadruple helix. We want to look at university, industry, community, and government engagement.
Yes.
In the process, because previously industry was at the gate waiting for the product.
Yes.
Now they must be part of the manufacturing process of that product. So that's why we need now to invite them, but also request them to open out beyond the 1 month holiday placement.
Or 6 weeks or something, yeah.
I come from medicine, and so for us in medicine, it's always been like that. The industry participates. Why? Because from 3rd year to internship, you were in the hospital, so you actually in industry.
Under supervision still.
Yes. So this has now to be transferred to the other programs. If I'm a journalist, a student doing journalism, I should be able to spend, of the 3 years, at least 18 months of accumulated contact time and exposure in the industry. Not going for a 1 holiday short to come and spend 3 weeks with NTV. No, I should be able to have regulated and continuous exposure. That's the only way that NTV will be sure, when hiring me, that I have the competence, instead of investing after I have graduated to train me to know what they do. I will already have been seen. And then as an employer, I will also have a pool, because I'll be part of the assessment. I'll know this was a good student when they were with us. When we advertise, can you please interest them to apply? So it will enable you to cast a net with a sure catch than saying, oh, so many applied, we could only find 10 that could pass the aptitude.
And even the 10, the quality of the 10 was...
Yes, you will still have to invest in training them to be good for the job. So if you are part of the process, you will be sure they are good for the job.
Okay, but right now where we see, even when we take the case study present, that you do have the product being more than the industry space that is existing today. How would you align that with the competence-based education and training?
Yeah, what we are looking at is beyond seeking jobs. And creativity, entrepreneurship, and innovation are critical in the competence-based, because the product should be able to create their own employment with the skills that they are now able to demonstrate. And so what we are seeing is going to be, in essence, an expansion of the industry. And that's the only way we can achieve the tenfold economic growth.
Okay.
Because the public service and the available private employers cannot absorb.
All right, Professor Chamanyo, now that's far-fetched, because now the conversation we're having is like 2030.
And it has to go that far.
And it has to go that far. But coming back to where we are by 2027, 2028, let's talk about the minimum standards for implementing CVET. The curriculum design, teaching, learning, assessment, the training, the student support. There's the quality assurance element, there's the industry and community linkages that you've just been talking about, but also the element of monitoring and evaluation on both sides of the stakeholders, and the element of gender and equity. Professor Mpeza, when we look at these standards, what has been offered as the bare minimum that should be considered by higher education institutions in terms of implementation?
First of all, it's not really like completely starting from zero. Universities have been doing these things. I think it's about the approach that is now going to be used. We have been operating in silos, I can say, for so many of the academic programs. When you talk about quality assurance, all universities have those mechanisms, but in a traditional system. The infrastructure, the human resource aspects, program and curriculum design, all these have been ongoing. The fundamental issue is how relevant should universities actually remain? Should be. How relevant are the programs that we are offering, and what's the value? What's the value for money, if you wish, and value for skills, and value for attitudes and knowledge? So we've had a system that has generated a lot of knowledge, actually, knowledge holders, if we may say. The issue now, and this is where I want us to focus maybe in the remaining minutes, is how do we transit? You know, relevance can be defined by anybody, but the community is spending money. Somebody came to my office and said, I'm going to spend so much money training this kid of mine, but there's no job. And I told them, continue training. You pay the fees. We are going to address this issue, since we are now transiting from the traditional education system to a competence-based education system. So, however, the community and the industry also have expectations. For example, do not expect these artisans and the people with experience, the people who are practitioners, to render their knowledge and experience to the universities pro bono, free of charge. Forget it. And this goes into a cost element, because we also have to align them on what is expected by the universities. So that is a major issue. And who is going to fund that? If the state, if the government does not provide mechanisms to prepare the entire community, entire society into this shift, by providing funding, by providing facilities, we should even be thinking about central facilities, centers of excellence, where we zone this country and say, okay, Jinja is famous for water resources, and so anybody doing water engineering and marine sciences, we have a center of excellence there where we put all our students who would be actually interfacing with the community. So there's that bit of funding. Then secondly is recognition. we need a mechanism that is going also to put together all these competencies. I know they are already there. We already have a qualifications framework where we can bring in these people to join the higher education system. And then the award system is also going to change, because like in the lower secondary, there is a component of the assessments that are sent to UNEB, and then the final exam constitutes the remaining part of the system. So our readiness and the time that we have been given is definitely not enough. But I always say that if you don't start, you will never start. So let's go for it and learn from it. Like we had the challenge of COVID here. You remember how people shifted to online training? Finally, now it is becoming a major delivery mode in universities.
You've had continuous...
Before maybe you come in, I could chip in something that 2027 is the start of the marathon. It's not going to be a sprint, because certain things will need time. So what we are targeting for 2027, in my view as a university head, is 3 things. We are targeting that by 2027 we have the documentary compliance. So the curricula have been reoriented from contact hours to notional hours, from lecture-based to student-led, from lecture to competence-based. The types of assessment have been redesigned. So we will tick the box that by 2027 the programs have been accredited. So that's documentary compliance. The second is the start of the mindset change and retooling. So we've already been retooling. At Uganda Matters, we've spent the last 6 months training, thanks to projects like the TagDev, which is a MasterCard-funded project, and others that are helping us to find the resources to train. Although National Council has also run regional train of trainers sessions where we've sent some of our faculty. So that's the second, retooling and reorienting the mindset of the lecturers. The third thing that we are now working on that should be there by 2027 when the cohort comes is ensuring that the learning environment, especially the digital transformation, has happened or is happening, so that accessibility to connectivity, to smart gadgets, laptops, and so on, and workspaces can happen. Then the rest, deepening the industry engagement, finding the resources for more staff, that is going to be a lengthy period. So probably what National Council didn't provide, but would be necessary, would be to provide those key milestones over the next 5 years. That between this period, these are the basics you should have. After this, these are the next requirements, because not everything can be in place by August 2027. That is an unrealistic expectation. Sure. So I think we need to be pragmatic, realize that there are essentials that we should start with. Like for a marathon, I mean, you need to buy your kit, then work on the fitness, which takes much longer, and then you can go and run at the marathon. So the same should apply, and then we shall find checkpoints along the way, but we need to give it that kind of length of time.
Okay, so on that note, what recommendations? I know you have mentioned that if there can be a guiding document, a phased guidance document on how this can be run and implemented for different levels and layers of the competence-based education and training. What other recommendations do you have to government and the other concerned stakeholders to ensure that this is a smooth transition? Because let's be realistic, even the lower secondary education right now that was rolled out over 4 years ago is not yet fully in operation. And this is cutting across different parts of the country. In Kampala here, it may look like everything is green, tick, 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 everything is smooth. But it's not the case in West Nile, it's not the case in Lango, it's not the case in Western Uganda. And so what are some of the recommendations based on what we have seen so far that if this can be done better, maybe holistically the whole country can be in the same direction, at least on a higher education level?
I think the one major recommendation should put in perspective the fact that institutions are at different levels. They also have different capacities, even in terms of student enrollment, the staff recruitments, the number of programs. I mean, a university that has got over 100 academic programs would require much more time, much more investment. So the National Council and all other stakeholders, including the Minister of Education that issued this circular instructing us to comply by 2027-2028 academic year, will definitely have to apply very fairness in terms of compliance. And then, so some universities, as he has said, probably will be already doing the run by August, because they have fewer programs, maybe they are facilitated. The second recommendation, apart from the one looking at every institution in its current status, would be for government to actually be deliberate and look at this issue as not belonging only to the universities, to the higher education institutions, because we are training for the nation, and therefore there has to be deliberate effort like funding and providing other resources, the establishment of centers of excellence. It's one thing to catch an institution for not complying, and it's another empowering it and resourcing that institution to realize a government goal. So I think this is the approach that needs to be done in regulating higher education institutions in compliance to transiting from the traditional education system, the competence-based education and training.
Okay, Professor Chamanya.
Yeah, and in addition to what Professor Mpeza has said, we need to be intentional. Government must be intentional. And this is because the competence-based, the move to competence-based, like I've already said, is critical to the tenfold economic growth. We have set ourselves a target of 2040. So we should therefore be intentional to say, what are the critical moves government should make to realize this? And in my mind, what comes first is that industry community engagement is going to be critical for universities, because that's the training ground for competence. Therefore, the industry should be incentivized to participate. So some tax waivers or other incentives must be put in place for industries to opt in, to say, okay, we shall be able to take students to this number. What benefits should we expect? And then government should highlight these, so that now industries take on part of the university ecosystem of training. Otherwise, at the moment, like you had earlier said, industry looks at this student as a potential cause of damage.
True.
or loss.
And even in this new direction, again, as I earlier alluded, industry is limited. If you only have a few media houses, NTV, for example, now, Equator University will come, Uganda Matters will come, Makerere University will come. Who do you help and who do you leave behind?
Exactly. But if you are incentivized, you might recruit one or two more people who will be mentoring and coaching these students, so that they're actually learning, but with someone. So those incentives must come. The other incentive that should, or the other move, like I had earlier said, competence-based education and training is going to be very much hinging on ability to access information, so that the lecturer concentrates more on the practical learning and discussion and problem solving with the student, not giving the information, so that universities can mount their learning management systems and the connectivity allows access by the students. The laptops are available. So government might need to consider subsidizing internet connectivity for universities. Subsidizing or even enabling universities to purchase laptops, all as a government intentioned move to say every student that qualifies and receives an admission to university can get a laptop. Government can afford that. Because information access is critical. The third thing that I'm looking at is the country is vast. We now have over 55 universities, but they are spread in different regions. Could we have a regional approach that will kind of give us an equitable access? Because the factors are different and the needs are different, but we need that equity and inclusivity to say that for this region, these 2 or 3 or 5 universities, public and private, are going to be the centers of excellence to be invested in for this period of time. Then we learn the lessons. In this region, these are the other, in this region and that. So we intentionally invest, enable, because not everyone will run at the same pace. But we must know those that are more likely to run and invest in them better. And then they become the centers from which kind of a hub and spoke. Yeah, kind of a hub and spoke approach, that this is the hub for this region. They can be able to help these other universities in the region. That could help. So then we can improve the infrastructure, help them with the salary and the wage bill, you know, connectivity, industries, and those hubs will now be the multiplier seed for the rest in that region. These things are possible if we really desire to achieve the 2040 vision and the 10-fold economic growth.
All right, so you have spoken as university leaders that must take on the mantle of this reform, but there are other stakeholders that we must also speak to today and this morning on the subject matter of competence-based education and training, and that is the student preparing to uptake this new form of education. That is the parent who is hearing it, I have been paying 3 million every semester. Now you're telling me I possibly may be having to pay 6 million. Inevitably. Inevitably. So to the parent paying that tuition for their children, to the student preparing to enter the university at this new level of competence-based education, there's also the employer who must eventually hire this graduate, but be part of the process, seemingly from the new reform. Yeah. What should they expect from Uganda's move to this competence-based education, and how can they hold universities accountable for what me, the parent, will be paying for me, the student who has become my own lecturer somehow, somewhere, or have to find lecturers from the field in order to be able to be qualified for industry? Let me start with you, Professor Chamanyo.
Yeah, thank you again. Yes, inevitably, we can promise ourselves a few things, but if we don't act, then we are going to pay an even heavier price, because we've already sent out this message that we are going to start churning out competent graduates that are skilled, more skilled than probably we've previously done. And therefore, we expect that their duration of stay in the field post-graduation without employment or without a productivity is going to be much shorter. That's the promise we are putting out there. Now, it needs to be financed. And so every stakeholder must be part of the process and the resourcing of this move. Government, as I have said, the parent who is sponsoring this private student must be able to spend more. This is paying forward, because if you don't pay now to hold the university accountable, but also enable it to perform, then your child is going to stay longer out, probably without productivity. And you're going to spend more maintaining them, because you won't abandon your child just because they graduated. You still, so pay up front, invest so that the university can create the environment and then train your student better. So that must happen.
Okay.
Then also, as a university, what we can promise for the industry is that if the industry is part of the process of design, delivery, assessment, it will be sure of the product it's going to get. So as we design these curricula, at Uganda Matters, we were able to invite some industry players for each of the curriculum that we want, to give us an idea of the skills they are looking for, the competences they would want. So they were able to input.
Okay.
Now, we are going to invite them in the teaching to give us invited lectures. And we hope to invite them in the examination, especially at the viva level, but also to give us the problems, because it's easy for a lecturer to think out a problem and send it to the students, but we want to hear the actual problem in the field from the industry.
I'm raising my eyebrow because I'm waiting for that phone call where you will be calling me to teach.
Yes, and of course, I know that we've once invited you for the media challenge in the journalism school, so it's going to be even more frequent.
Yes.
And then at the product end, then you will be certain that I'm getting a competent. So your investment in training this person for the job after graduation is going to be much less.
Professor Mpeza.
Actually, I wanted to give some relief to this parent who is now worried about the possibility of an increase in the cost of education of their kids or student or people. There are models, there are financing models that can actually be applied. So if I'm a university like Equator University, I will ask for tuition, which you'll pay directly to the university. And for the period, for the placements, all I will charge is a fee to cater for the field supervisors. Right. Then allow this parent, when the student is out there in the community, to take charge of the non-tuition costs around this particular student. And so whereas the actual final cost will look to have increased, the operational cost of the university will also increase. There will be a need for parents to prepare to spend more. It's just like the example in secondary schools and primary schools. Some schools actually have one figure to take care of everything, whereas others charge less but ask you to bring the requirements. If you put the maths together, you may find that they are even paying more. That's right. So it's going to be a shared responsibility, but government needs to think about providing actually community placement hubs in each of the regions, so that like they are creating farmers center, they are creating another center for automobile development, they create another center for agriculture and whatever they want to do, so that we all have shared access. Because individual higher education financing does not work, especially now that the global economy, the national economy, everybody is struggling. The parents are struggling. We have attrition, very high attrition rates in the current system. So you can imagine. It will also be a point of relief if, as a university, I have a big number of students away from the campus. I will also have relief, because that time I will spend less on utilities and so on and so forth, but then shift this burden into the community. And so the local governments have a role to play. And I think this is the discussion that is not covered within the documentation of moving into competence-based education. These are the implications that are unsaid and unwritten.
There's another complication, and probably between, again, the parent and the student. Will my degree still mean the same thing in this competence-based era?
No, not at all. It will be beyond the paper qualification. It's about what you are able to do. You may have your first class, you may have, but they will test you on what you are able to do if you get a job, or what you are able to create and co-create when you are given the ample environment, you know, provide funding, like now these government funding opportunities, EMIOGA, PDM and so on, will be now deliberate. We say this funding is for youth who are going to develop their entrepreneurship projects, and then we are able to move them to the next level up to commercialization. So this is product development. However, this random support that is given to anybody, really, actually, it benefits individuals than the overall community.
Okay.
Yes, actually, for me, I would say the degree will not mean more. The degree will mean what it actually says. Previously, our degrees probably have not meant exactly what it says. When I say this is a first class and they get to the industry and they appear very blank, then the degree is not even worth the paper on which it is printed. But now, if I say this is a first class agriculture graduate, a first class journalism student, because we've skilled them, we've assessed them throughout the process, when we later document on the certificate, we shall also tell you what they're able to do. So it will mean what it says.
So it would also take away first class upper, second class upper.
First class upper will be there,
The
but
grading
first
is going to change.
first class upper will mean first class upper. Not who
But
remembered.
it's meant first class upper.
No,
So
first class
the grading
upper
will change to
usually
just-
meant who remembered the best. Now we are going to say first class upper will mean he knows and can do what he knows. So it's going to mean exactly that, because previously
Which
we
would
were
be
sure
applicable
it's
to the one in second who also knows and now can also do, even
Exactly.
the one in the other
But
grading
the-
knows and does.
absolutely.
So they're
but the
all the
range of proficiency
Okay.
will enable us to grade this. Otherwise, we shall now go to a pass-fail grade, which might not give us the real
But
thing.
maybe Priscilla is also right. There's a possibility that along the way,
Yes.
the issue of classification of
Has to
degrees
change.
It will change.
It has to be thought about.
Yes.
Because now we have 40, some universities I think are going for 50-50. So the 50% for practical skills is probably going to reflect, and the only way we can do it is through testing your skills and competences in the job market.
Yes, but being aware that the competence levels achieved by the students will not be the same. So we should be able to distinguish who has
And the same could be a debate of, do they do it faster than
absolutely.
another?
And
But
also,
I am dealing with professors, so
the other thing that the competency will bring in is that the progression is not going to be time-based. We now should be able to expect people to finish
Some can finish earlier,
earlier,
some can finish
because
later.
you have demonstrated the competence faster, so you progress to the next.
Level.
Others could take longer, so we allow them to take longer.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that means that I can finish my degree in 2 years.
You could.
Yeah.
You could.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. As we come to the close of this conversation, what's your final, word to the different stakeholders that at the end of the day, this is a step in a good direction, as earlier alluded to, getting us into the $500 billion US bracket economically, and also the Vision 2040. Professor Mpeza.
I think the promise we should give ourselves is that when change comes, it should be embraced.
Okay.
A few people will take it up, but finally it will swallow everybody else. My last caution or cause of fear is that we should remember that we have the largest percentage of our population of young people in this country. And the current numbers that are within the higher education sector are very small. You know, we have people who qualify to go for higher education, we are less than 7%. And it's usually an indicator of the progression of the development of the country. So it should be a responsibility of everybody, and the richest stakeholder in all this is government, and they are the patrons. Government is the patron of the society, and we think we can't carry this on our own as institutions, and we need this pragmatic, a deliberate intention to support this particular competence-based education and training system that is coming to us.
All right, Professor.
Yes, this is a major change, and so we should anticipate there will be pains and pleasures, but we should stay the course and ensure that we realize this transformation. What is going to be critical, like Professor Mpeza has said, is the engagement and participation of every stakeholder. Like I said in the quadruple helix, the government should provide the leadership and set the stage and environment. The industry and community must be equally invested, and the university should realize that the teaching and learning dynamics have changed and the players are going to be different. Industry and community are going to make a better contribution, and so should be embraced.
Okay.
And as parents and students, we should also welcome this change and be able to adapt to the different needs that will enable us to realize it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, professors,
Thank you so
industry
much.
leaders, and ones that are guiding this new change and reform that we will be seeing as higher education institutions do move to competence-based education and training, ultimately a shift in questioning what that degree will be holding after 2028. It's no longer going to be a question of what did you study, it's going to be a question of what can you actually do after undertaking the nature of studies that you did. And that's a question we will be looking forward to seeing the realities in industry and in government. Thank you so much for being with us here in Morning at NTV. I am Priscilla Regina Nelwoga. Have a blessed day.